Nik, thank you so much for joining me on this call. When I started doing my YouTube channel, I started doing these like just answering common questions. But as soon as I started doing interviews, all of my viewers loved them and were always asking me to do more. So yeah, I really appreciate you hopping on here and answering like all the questions that I'm about to pepper you with.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's cool to be here. I watched some of your interviews, so and it's always great, to see familiar faces and stuff and talk about writing. So it's great.
Yeah. So, okay, I knew who you were, I think a long time before you knew who I was, because I read a lot of your stuff on Medium before I even knew that regular people like me could write on Medium. But for people who might not be as like into the platform as I was, tell me a bit about yourself, the kind of stuff you write on Medium, and like when you started writing, not just on Medium, but overall.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, those two things almost coincide it was pretty simultaneously.
Mhm.
But first, it's always crazy to me when people say that. Oh yeah, I've been reading your stuff, and it's like I've known you for. I feel like I've known you for longer, and I'm always like, Jesus Christ. So it's very surreal. But I started writing in 2014, where I
On
started.
Medium?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I came to it because Tony Stubblebine, who runs Coach.me, who is the editor for Better Humans, one of the big publications on Medium for people who don't know. He is also running a company called Coach.me, and they're doing coaching, digital coaching. And I was just using their app, basically, which used to be a habit tracker. And then I became one of the first coaches because he approached me about that. And then they started Better Humans for the coaches to write in on Medium. And then it's like, oh, we have this magazine on this new cool platform called Medium. And I was like, all right. And then I just started writing. And that's how I came to Medium. So it was pretty random and coincidental. But yeah, that's when I started. I think I started writing on my blog slightly before, a few weeks maybe. But other than that, yeah, that was pretty much the start. And so the background of why I started writing in general is that I don't know. I was studying business in school, and then somehow, while I was on exchange in the US, I started thinking, maybe I want to do something more entrepreneurial, something for myself, something creative. And so eventually, when I came back, when I finished my bachelor's, I was like, I'm going to be self-employed. And then I decided what I was going to do when I was self-employed, so it was more like I just want to be an entrepreneur. And I started translating. So I started translating English to German because I'm from Germany, born and raised. And that just after my exchange seemed like a natural thing to do. And then it became clear pretty quickly that most people wanted writing more so than they wanted translating services. And so I just kind of went with it. And I love writing anyways. And I wrote samples on my blog to just show my translation skills and stuff like that. So that's how it all started. And then I just kept writing a blog, which says this is good for my reputation and stuff. And it was also just fun. I always loved writing in school even already. So I just, kept rolling with it. And then
that's the one ththing everyone has in common that I interview is like, no matter what their level of success is, they come to Medium primarily because they love writing. And I think that's something that you need, because success on Medium is so nebulous and you never know when your next viral or non-viral article is going to be. You have to come from like a place of very deep, profound writing love, because otherwise you just quit in the first month. Because this actually brings me to something I was really interested to ask you about. You were writing on Medium long before they started paying authors. Yeah. And I wanted to ask what that was like, because one of the questions I get asked the most is like, oh, well, if I can't make money on Medium through the partner program, like how else, what's the benefit of writing? And I've never been able to answer this question because I have only written while I was earning money from the partner program. But right. You, a veteran, have been doing it for much, much longer than that. So tell me, what was that like? And what was the transition to becoming like a paid member like?
I think it's a good question. It's very critical. I love that you brought up the fun part, because this was one of my biggest takeaways. And it took me a couple of years to actually fully grasp it, that if you don't love writing, whatever you do, whatever you try to monetize eventually as your passion, if you don't do it for the love of it, if you can't do it without the money, then you probably won't stick around long enough to actually get the money. So, and you need to let the fun and just like love for writing, you need to let that carry you probably for a long time before you see decent results. So that was a big lesson. And then writing, the first few years, I was writing on my blog. First of all, I was just learning writing because the first few articles just sucked. Like, it was bad. naturally. And then, so it was just, I was really focused on learning and just trying to extract everything as much as possible from each article and editing each article and just going from one thing to the next. And also for the first few years, it was sometimes spotty and random, my publishing schedule. So sometimes I would just disappear for a few weeks of Medium, so to speak, republish something, the odd interview here and there, do stuff like that. And I was just focused on trying to make the money elsewhere, kind of. But then when the partner program did come around, it was very obvious that, oh, wow, now I can get paid for writing what I actually want to write. So I was like, this is amazing. If this works, we're winning. Like everyone is winning if that works, if that model ends up working. And so I did half and half at first, I remember, for like the first year of like half paid articles and half free articles still, because everyone was writing for free on Medium at that point to build an audience already and get email subscribers and those things. And then after a year, I think, or 6 months maybe, I just went all in on the partner program. I was like, I'm only going to write partner articles from here on out.
Yeah, and I mean, here we are. How many followers do you have? It's like 80,000, right? It's a ludicrously large number. Unbelievable. So, okay, I've got a slightly uncomfortable question. You don't have to answer this, but your best month on Medium, how much money did you make?
Oh, the best month was, I think, 11,000.
Oh my God, that's so much money. That must have been good. Was there like one story? Wait, hang on. Was it the story that you wrote about, like, you're not lazy, bored, or unmotivated? Was that one?
That one did really well, but that was in 2019. And in 2020, I had one story that was bigger. It was how to identify a smart person in 3 minutes or something.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that one too.
Yeah. And that one, it has less claps, but it has more views than the other story. And that carried me for a couple months, which was also a hindsight lesson. And like a painful one, because when the drop came, it was big. But that story, I think, was that was the story that led to that month.
Oh my gosh, $11,000. That's incredible. Yeah. So it's one thing, a misconception that I see a lot in my viewers is people think that if you were just lucky enough to start on Medium, if you were an early adopter, that you're basically guaranteed success. And I personally don't think that's true, because I've seen a lot of authors who started around the same time you did, and they kind of, either they didn't go all in on the partner program, or they just didn't shift to writing the kind of content that Medium readers wanted. But I'd love to hear your take. What do you think contributed to your success? Do you think it was because you were an early adopter or something else?
For sure. So I think all of these factors people usually look at matter, but then people, they want just one factor to determine everything, and usually that's not the case, right? So in my case, being an early adopter definitely helped, because I was already there when all the people started coming. I think Medium, even now, last year, they almost doubled their traffic or something. It's like 170 million visitors a month now, and then the year before it was 80 or 90 million.
Wow.
And then so it must have been much, much less in the first few years. And so I was already there when some of the big growth waves started happening. And I actually only started tracking followers probably 2-3 years ago or something like that, because it was not something where you were acutely aware of, how does this impact things? As long as you weren't getting paid, nobody was, people weren't obsessing about the stats as much as about maybe email subscribers or something like that.
Yeah.
And then so I can't really tell you what the growth line before that was, but definitely, I think 2016, I did the math at one point. I have an article, it's a bit contrarian, it's called Why You're Too Late on Medium. And it just breaks down the whole economics of platform growth. And what it basically says is that if you're there when the whole platform grows 400% in a year, you're going to benefit from that growth. And if the growth slows down afterward, obviously, there's going to be less trickle down to you, especially if the platform gets bigger and more competitive. So there is that element. But that said, it's absolutely true what you said. And we have friends like Amar and Sean, who started 2 years ago, had a great first year and had just a good run and just learned the basics of the platform really quickly. So I think how fast you learn, how well you understand that Medium is a unique place with its own unique context. You need to tell stories specifically for Medium and so on. You can do really well even in your first year. But so that's still possible. But obviously, if you're an early adopter of anything, you do stand to benefit if that thing does end up taking off.
Yeah, so I guess you're probably the person I've ever spoken to who's been on Medium for the like 7 years now we're going on. And so I think you're uniquely qualified to speak on the future of Medium's platform because you've been with them through all these crazy shifts, like supporting publications, not supporting publications, paid content, unpaid content, whatever. What do you think is going to happen to Medium in the next couple of years, if you had to guess?
I mean, we have gone back and forth on so many things so many times. It really is crazy sometimes where it's like publications matter. Publications don't matter at all. Followers matter. Followers don't matter at all. And so it goes in cycles. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big lesson, that everything goes in cycles. Views, earnings, different aspects of the platform mattering more, being emphasized. Everything changes so fast all the time, but usually everything also comes back around. So that was a big lesson, and usually it takes longer than you would like it to. So if you're down and you're waiting for the change, it takes long, and if you're up and you want to keep it that way, then usually it doesn't last as long. But that's normal. That's one thing I learned. Like, tech companies growing have cycles, and then in terms of where it's going, I mean, you see them expanding now into sort of the membership, the program, this $5 a month. I think that stands. This whole will be the Netflix of reading, kind of, is sort of the proposition. This whole flat rate for reading, kind of. I think that stands, and Medium does that well. And I don't see really any big competitors. New York Times, big publications, they have their own content, but even those in part syndicate to Medium and things like that. So in terms of how much bang for your buck you can get as a reader, I think that Medium is pretty much winning that, as far as I can tell. And platform growth is there. Member growth seems to be there from the public numbers that we see. So I think that part is good, but they need to have a huge number probably to make the economics work on their end, because it's not rocket science that Medium is going to take a cut at some point of the $5, because right now they hand everything from readers to writers. But it's obvious to me that at some point they'll be like, well, one of the $5 a month now goes into our pocket because we need to for stuff. The other thing is sort of what career opportunities for writers can they offer on top of just, write articles and make money. So because I think most writers, they go through some evolution, and then a lot of them end with books, obviously, becoming an author, sort of a staple. So
I think it's kind of what a lot of writers I know, that's their ultimate dream. Like, I know Sean really wants to be writing a fiction fantasy book. I really want to be writing a fiction fantasy book. And I know you've said something like that in the past too, right? Like, your ultimate dream is to write a book.
Yeah, and whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and I mean, a book puts you on the map. I mean, it has lots of benefits, and now we have lots of entrepreneurs and founders, writing books and ghostwriting books and having books ghostwritten, things like that. But I think most writers eventually, when you write so many articles, you're like, what's the next bigger thing? Like, how can I package everything into something that feels like a little more meaningful, more compelling, and also just something you can be known for, right? It's no one says he's the guy who wrote that article. No, that's not really how you refer to people, unless you're sharing that article with them right now, right? And that's kind of the point. But it's like, oh, he wrote the book about, philosophy or whatever the topic is. So there's some benefits to that. And I mean, just yesterday or when it was, the story came out that Medium acquired a book platform.
And I'm trying to find the name of it. It was called like Gross or something. Is that right?
Glotus. It was some Latin term. They explained it in the article.
Gloss. Glose. Yeah. Yes. And it means, what was it?
Is it for
annotation.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense then, that you think that Medium might be pivoting to what additional opportunities they can offer talented writers other than just the Medium Partner Program. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, again, I've only been here for 2 and a bit years, not quite 7 yet, but no, that checks out with what I understand from the platform as well. So again, 7 years, you must have seen some pretty spectacular highlights, and of course some pretty hard challenges. So I would love to know, what's been the highlight and then what's been the low light?
One of the highlights was definitely they did when they launched the partner program. Tony from Better Humans was organizing some of the first batch of content that they did, and he asked me if I wanted to write an article and contribute to the first edition, basically. So the edition is Medium's newsletter that gets sent to all members, I think. And then ultimately what I ended up doing is I had an article about reading that was popular in Better Humans, and I did a follow-up, the complete guide to remembering what you read. And then it's a short piece. It's pretty concise. And that was the first main featured article in the first edition that they sent out. That was really cool. That was just like a very, they felt like historical kind of, like just like, cool, I'm part of this. And so that was really cool. And then Ev left some notes on it, and I was like, holy, like, so it was very like surreal.
That's so
and
cool.
then that was just I'll always remember that, I think. So that was just a very memorable thing. And then in terms of lowlights or whatever you want to call it, definitely sort of the troughs of Medium. And these are rarely singular events. It's rarely that sometimes some singular event happens, like the URL snafu that they had recently with the profiles. So you could pick your own custom subdomain for your profile, but it actually changed your profile handle, and they didn't, sort of the interface didn't communicate that when you made the change. And so I ended up basically accidentally changing my username. And then someone squatted on it and hopped on it. And then I had to resolve that with Medium, try to get my SEO back. And because I had built links over years, right, from websites and stuff. So there's rarely these individual events. The troughs are just, sometimes it's just brutal. Especially if you spend too much time in stats, and I'm guilty at times of this, and you're like, oh man, this has been going down for like 3 months straight. What am I, like, how is this going to keep going? And then you start questioning whether your writing has actually started to suck, which usually it doesn't. So for the most part, your writing doesn't vary all that much within, from week to week. It's more, even when I look back on my own writing, I usually see the big shifts every maybe 6 months to a year, where this is where my voice kind of changed, or, I started using different words, or things like that. So this is very gradual. But then with Medium stats being so volatile at times, you start to sometimes question your writing. And so that can feel sometimes like, okay, you got to grind it out and stuff. But also I've been to maybe 2 or 3 of these cycles now, and usually they end up working out, and at some point it just goes back up. But it always feels uncomfortable to just need to get through that.
I think with Medium, probably because your financial aspect is tied to your writing quality, a lot of times, like, good writing does well and bad writing does poorly in terms of the finance. And that makes sense to me. But then, when you, like you said, like, at least for me, my stats have been in the garbage for probably since October, maybe.
Yeah.
It's just steady downhill. I can't get the numbers I used to get. And then you're like, is it me? Am I the problem? And then, of course, you start talking to other people, and they're like, wait, no, I've been having it since around the same time. And you realize you're not the crazy one. It is just another slump. And then you just have to hope, because I remember this happened, I want to say like the 1st January, the 3 or 4 months after I started writing on Medium. And views got cut in half out of nowhere for a lot of people, and everyone panicked. And I was like, oh my God, I've only been here for 3 months. It's not fair. I deserve more time. And then, of course, the next month it all shaked out fine. And I was glad, because a lot of people quit at that point. And I was glad that I'd stayed and worked through it, because, if you make it through, the competition's lesser on the other end. But it was tough. And you're right, there just keeps going sometimes. And you just have to keep remembering your writing's good. And of course, when I read your writing, I'm like, this is good writing, but it's hard to remember that when it's your own work sometimes. So
That's true.
Okay, cool. So I feel like I'm drawing on a very lot of your 7-year expertise here, but I guess if you had any like one underrated tip that you think doesn't really get talked about a lot on how to be successful on Medium or even off Medium, what would you say?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many things. I think I can think of 2 sort of specific things. One is kind of how to be successful on Medium in a nutshell, and then the other one is more just a general approach, maybe to writing on Medium. The general one first, because that's kind of it's a mindset shift, and when I had that, it was really powerful for me. I think it also goes back to something Tony wrote once, way back in the day, that with the partner program, the article on Medium became the product. And so what you're supplying as a writer, so you just try to make some startup analogies to your writing. So what you're supplying is an article, but the article is the product. And if you're in the partner program, you're charging for your product. So and people, that's why when people show up on Medium and they want to make money 10 minutes in, and they're like, oh, I'm probably going to make, 500 the first month or something, but they've never really written before in public. You're supplying just a crap product, man. And you're charging for it still, right? So that's your freedom to do, right? And it could still do well, but don't expect, to get hundreds or thousands of dollars within a few months if you have no experience supplying the product and you're charging for it. That's your decision. And you should treat your writing accordingly. So don't be super spammy. Don't include like a ton of affiliate links or whatever. Just focus on making the product itself actually good. And yeah, so that was just a big sort of mindset. Oh wow, actually, it's like I'm a vendor here. I'm charging for things.
Yeah.
So just approaching it with that mindset, that helps, and it also helps to, on the other hand, not charge for a while or just make little money on Medium, but still do it for the fun and do it for the craft. And so develop that mindset where that allows you to keep going while the money isn't working until it eventually does. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is just that I think there's only really two parts to winning on Medium, which is consistency and experimentation. And that's really it. So consistency is you need a writing habit. You need a habit of publishing frequently, especially early in your writing career. The more you publish, the better, because you learn a lot from each article. Your improvement from article to article is so high, right? You might improve 100%, 50% from one article to the next. And then as you go on, the improvement becomes more and more incremental. So you can go down with your frequency if you want. You can write, 3 times a week or twice instead of 5 or 6 times. But then you just need to have that consistency eventually. I mean, if you stop showing up, you lose, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have that consistency. And it can be less as you sort of evolve, but start there and start building that habit. Because if you don't have that, nothing else is going to matter. And then the second part is just experimenting and continuing to experiment. Because I also see this a lot. People just finding one pattern and maybe it works once or a few times, and then they just stick in that pattern forever. And even when it stops working, now they're committed to that pattern and they'll just write the only 2-minute articles forever. And then their metrics, their numbers never change again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can you not think, let me try something else here? So to just always keep that experimentation going, even if you do that sort of within a contained little box inside your consistent routine. But I think that's the only 2 parts you need. And if you can do those, then I think over time you'll do fairly well on Medium.
That's such I love the consistency and experimentation part. Because that again really resonates with kind of how I've been thinking. Like you have to write to do well. Like that should be obvious, but so many times it isn't. And then trying new things. I know I'm guilty of this. Like as you were saying it, I was like, so like in May of last year, I tried something new and it did really well. And I just kept doing that. And I stopped getting better. And I was like, wait, where's my growth? And it was because I hadn't tried anything new. But what I really loved is, thinking of the article as the product. That's so true. And I think especially a lot of folks think of traditional blogging as an analogy to Medium. And I don't think the two could be more different. On Medium, each article is standalone. That's how Medium markets it. And that's how you need to think about it being marketed. And not only that, but you can't count on the same people seeing your work time after time. So you have to treat, you can't rely on your brand as much as you could perhaps with like a WordPress blog or anything else, because if someone sees your stuff once, they might not follow you and they just might never see your stuff again. So
that's very true.
Yeah. Each view on each article has to be like treated as a standalone. And I think, a lot of folks, I would love it. For example, if Medium started working on like allowing some chapter mechanism for books, because I think Medium is a cool platform for writing, and fiction would be a great addition to that. But until then, that is a really a game changer for me, just thinking about that now. Cool. So final sort of pivot here. I want to start thinking, one thing I tell everyone is that Medium is a great place to make money writing online, but it's so hard because only 10% of people make over $100, let alone an actual life-changing amount of money. It's possible, but it's hard. It's a lot easier to think of Medium as a portfolio builder, a way to get additional clients, a way to drive traffic to your non-Medium business. So I wanted to ask you, because you've had a lot of ventures over the years, I would love to ask, how has Medium helped you not just make money on Medium, but make money off Medium as well?
I mean, without Medium, I wouldn't be here. Let's face it.
Sure.
So that's the first thing, because it's one of the first things I stumbled into when I started writing, and I just stuck with it all the way, and it just panned out in in a big way. So that's the first thing. And then also that Medium is its own platform. It's centered around reading. It has its own audience. It's a specific context. So I learned a lot of a lot of what I know about how to write just came from sort of catering to that audience, trying to understand Medium, the platform, the context. So I was very, like, my whole writing basically is shaped through Medium's lens to a certain degree, at least. So there's that. So just early exposure to an audience, to feedback, and then also to just like the social online game, kind of, because you can do this on Twitter, you can build your platform wherever you want, but you're always going to go to some platform. You need to go somewhere and get people, and sort of like, your boss, and you're like, hey, let me pick you up. And then whether it's your email list or whatever private or more, let's say, tight-knit community you might have or want to build as a creative, you need to get those people from somewhere. And then Medium just happened to be a very good place to learn how to do that, and simultaneously, get better at writing. There's the money, of course, sort of this whole get paid for writing what you want, which is insane still. We never had that. For 2,000 years, we didn't have that. Everything was always... So
many people take it for granted, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing, right? So there was always trade-offs with getting paid for writing. And now they kind of have disappeared. So that is huge. So there's that. And then, but on the other hand, of course, Medium is like one platform, and now there's many. And I've gone from, one to the next, and tried this one, tried that one, tried that one. I also learned over time that this whole, like, you need your own community. That's actually this whole, because I also kept going back on email lists a lot, back and forth, basically. I started one when I started writing, and people were always saying the money is in the list, all these sort of cliches around it. And I was full on sold on that for a long, long time. And then for, I don't know, 2 years or so, I really wasn't, because I was like, you always depend on people. If you pivot your email list, from books to fly fishing or whatever, no one's going to read your emails anymore. So it's not like an email list is it's the end all be all. But then last few months, I just realized, but I can't think of anything better so far in terms of owning your audience, having a direct relationship with readers where you get paid for your stuff and things like that. So I started also going back on that a little bit. So I think that's important, and then make Medium sort of, one aspect of that. It's like you said, it's a great place for many more reasons than just the money part, which is the hardest part to make work as when you're writing on Medium. So think about all the other parts. Try multiple platforms, try to make multiple things work. And then Medium is usually the best when you don't really care about the money, or at least when you don't depend on the money. I've had both phases where I didn't depend on it and I did. And it's much more stressful when you do depend on the money, because sometimes it's literally, you can do anything you want and it just doesn't work, because that's just the phase you're in. You're in the trough. So it doesn't work no matter what you do. And then you just feel really bad because you're like, this is my income and so on. So if you can at least not make your whole income dependent on Medium, once you get to the point where it feels like that, I think that's still sort of a smart thing to do, to just keep your sanity and keep enjoying your writing also, and focus on the improvement, the variation, the experimentation and stuff like that.
I'm getting like a stiff neck because I'm nodding so much at everything you're saying. But so what's next? So it sounds like you're going to be writing on Medium for the foreseeable future, unless something really drastic changes, because as you say, there is literally, as far as I'm aware, no better place to make money by writing online, whether you make money through the partner program or you're using it as a place to just experiment, or literally anything else. But what else is on the horizon for you? Like, what's coming up?
So I definitely, I'm going to do books. I'm already working on books, because I was also at that point where I was like, oh, it's time. And I was just looking back on a big catalog of articles, and I started seeing patterns. So this topic I have covered with 5 articles. I have like 30 on this one and so on. So at first I was thinking, I can probably bundle these. And so I'm just experimenting with that. I don't want to go all out and do this whole publisher book deal and so on. I don't think I'm at that stage yet. And I don't think making a book needs to be such a, big 3-year, whatever, like super crazy effort. I just want to, compile my past work, just work on it, polish it, see if I can make it into something bigger that's still coherent and meaningful to people, and just try and self-publish and sell that. So I'm working on some things there. And the other thing is that I also started the Substack email newsletter, right? A paid one, which I was also going back and forth on for a while. I first started Substack in 2019 or something. I started one and grew it for a bit. But I was like, maybe this is a cool sort of central hub of your hub and spoke, this whole model, right? Where you have your center, your community, and if you can have some way of your audience directly paying for your writing, that's just a great baseline to have. I think that's a great baseline of security, especially if it's recurring revenue or at least some part of it. It just gives you sort of stability and safety, because my main goal with writing is I want to keep playing. So I just want to make sure that every month I can keep playing the full-time writing game. So yeah, I was thinking a lot about that. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a good time now after all these years to, have that as a sort of center, and then still write on all the other platforms and use those both sort of for marketing and also to, make money and stuff like that. But so this is a big thing I'll just try to work on this year.
I recently launched with some other writers, Amar Sinem and Mike Thompson, who I love all of them so much. Like, that's one of the boons of me for taking writing more seriously, is I've become really good friends with so many writers, and they're so cool. That's been the launching of the paid Substack for me. I was really scared to do it because I was like, I know even though people pay for my writing on Medium, there's a conduit, right? They're not just paying for me. They're paying for access to a lot of stuff, and some of that is me. So it was kind of scary to be like, I think you should pay, $10 a month for access to me and 3 other people, because we've got great stuff to say. The response for that was great. And how because I know you launched it because I signed up this week.
Thank
right?
You,
it was your first issue this week. How did it go?
It went well, I think. It's the way the revenue is displayed. It's not it's not split into what's recurring, and because people can buy annual memberships or they can buy monthly, and then so you don't really know at first. Technically all of it is recurring, but that implies that people will like always renew, right? Which not everybody will. But I made the first 1,000 gross whatever it is dollars in revenue, so that felt great. I had no idea. I also didn't really have any expectations, and I know growing a subscription is super hard because again, there's a recurring charge on your credit card, right? Who wants more of those? So, but I'm glad the way it turned out, and also just that I just feel super inspired. It's because I'm writing literally for you. That's the name of the newsletter also, but it's first. So I'm always thinking about the reader, the person, and everything else really doesn't matter. And no matter what the platform is, Quora or Medium or what it is, you always take the context into account. How long is this? What's the headline? What image should I use? Things like that. And now it kind of all goes out the window. And it's a very surreal feeling because you're not used to it at all. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to optimize this note at the top or something. And I was like, actually, no one cares. You can just type 2 sentences more. Because people are already paying for this. So it was really, it's just funny what you learn. But it was also, I feel super inspired to, write there and then rework those pieces and fan out to other platforms and stuff like that. So I feel very inspired to write, and I think also the money side of it, I think it's like good enough start kind of to start with. I'm pretty excited about it, and
So I know what your newsletter is about because I know you from Medium already, because you do a lot of philosophy stuff. But for people who don't, what is your newsletter about?
Right. It's called You. And the idea was that every day you should get some support for the most important person in your life, which is, you. So I was just thinking of patterns. I was thinking, what do people told me in the past that they like my writing for? And there's 3 things, which is inspiration, emotional backup, kind of. So just someone in your corner, like rooting for you, and then just smart ideas, just new way to think about things, new perspectives. So every weekday, I'm just trying to send out one of those. And sometimes it's a 4-minute article. Sometimes it's like a 1-minute read, or 8 minutes, something longer for the weekend. And I'm just trying to be creative with it. Just ship something every weekday. And that meets any of these 3 criteria, and then see how that goes.
Yeah, it's you're right. Surreal is a good word for it, for publishing on Substack, because people have already paid, and then you know that they already value you, and then all you have to do is live up to that expectation. And It's so cool. Okay, 2 more questions because I think I'm coming up to the end of my free 40 minutes here. I have so many things I could ask you, but so first of all, I would love to know, out of all of the stories that you've published on Medium, which one are you the most proud of? And I mean, if it's earned the most money, that's great. But the one that you wrote it and you're like, this is possibly the best thing I've ever written, or, you know, gotten the best reaction, or what work are you most proud of?
There's one I keep coming back to. It's called Self-Improvement Has Made Me Worse. And it's from 2017. And with that story, I can see a turning point. It's like after that story, I look at things published after that, and I'm not cringing as nearly as much as I am when I look at everything that came before. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that's why it's special to me. The story is basically just a retelling of Batman versus Superman, the movie. I love doing movies and, you know, trying to make movies compelling and draw lessons from them. That's something I love doing and do a lot of. And that one just came together really well. It also was really popular. I think it was a free story at first, and it got featured in Pocket or something and got like 100,000 views in a day. So it was super popular. I think that helped with sort of remembering it and things like that. But I was also just so proud because I was so stoked on the movie itself and just retelling that story and then relaying, sort of integrating philosophy lessons and stuff like that. So everything just came together really well, and that one has always kind of stuck with me, and I go back to it a lot, and also to just the movie, the scenes, and so this one I keep coming back to, and that I'm very proud of, even though it's been, I think, 3 years now since I published it.
I think this is so funny. I was trying to remember what the first article of yours I ever read was, and I'm reading this, and I think it was this one. That is hilarious. Because I was reading it because I was like, oh wait, the name rang a bell, but reading it like the first line of like, when Batman meets Superman for the first time, you instantly know who's in charge and who's in trouble. And I was like, I have read this before. I think this was the first one of yours, possibly, that I ever read. That's so cool. I'm going to include a link for everyone else because it's very, very good writing. And I can definitely see why it's like your top moment or top story on here, because it's fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, I will wrap it up. Self-promotion time. If people want to find you, where should they go?
I mean, Medium is always a good place. Mm-hmm. My handle is so screwed up. It's at NGOEKE, which is basically my last name's work in there, which is not very good for international any sort of international branding, but here we are. And then I guess the newsletter is also a good starting point, and that's at uletter, like a U plus newsletter kind of thing, uletter.substack.com. Mm-hmm. And I think everything just sort of trails off from there.
All right, I've got all the links that I'll post in the video description. But yeah, once again, Nik, thank you so much for your literally invaluable wisdom. I know people will probably charge a lot of money to get what you've just told me. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. This has been fantastic. And also, like, just nice to see you again as a person.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again sometime. Always up for, talking about Medium and writing. So very cool. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, happy writing.